There's been many times in sports where athletes have such an outstanding season, which results in a massive payday during the off-season. However, when those players secure the money, they lose motivation and their games drop off. In the NBA, it happens way more frequently because most contracts are guaranteed, so you'd get paid regardless. There are also times when players just vanish and barely play after signing a massive deal. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and in this video, let's talk about some NBA players who vanished after signing a huge contract. It could be for a multitude of different reasons, so let's take a look. Chandler Parsons. The summer of 2016 was known for so many average players signing lucrative deals, as so many teams had cap space. Parsons' deal was almost immediately mocked by the fans. The Grizzlies signed him to a 4-year, $94 million deal after a shaky 2 seasons with the Mavs. He had already suffered numerous nagging injuries, and while he was decent in Dallas, there's no way he was worth that much. Not to mention, Parsons just came off knee surgery, and nobody knew if he could even bounce back from it. It turns out, he really couldn't bounce back, as those knee problems caused several setbacks. In the following seasons, he ended up playing 34, 36, and 25 games in his first 3 years in Memphis. Then he got traded as a salary dump to the Hawks, and so for the last year of his deal, he played just 5 games. In the games he did play in, he looked like a shell of his former self. Numbers and minutes severely dropped off, and after that contract was up, Parsons did not get any other offers. That was the last we've seen of him in the NBA. I feel like he might have gotten unfairly criticized in those years, cause I understand Grizz fans were upset he was making so much money and couldn't play, but his knee problems were seriously crippling. I think at one point there was a stat that said he had more Instagram posts than games played for the Grizzlies, or something like that. Luol Deng and Timofey Mozgov. Also in 2016, the Lakers decided it was time to retool their roster and chased free agents all year long. The funny thing is, none of the marquee free agents wanted to sign with them, so they opted for Luol Deng and Timofey Mozgov, because they had cap space to burn. 4 years, $72 million for Deng, 4 years, $64 million for Mozgov. Yikes. Now, Deng's contract, when he signed it, it was less criticized, because he just had a few good seasons in Miami. But Mozgov's was unanimously deemed the worst signing of that offseason. They were also really weird signings that did not match their timeline. At this time, the Lakers were attempting to build around Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, and D'Angelo Russell. So the bulk of their possessions were going to them anyway. They wanted them to get more touches to develop. As a result, Deng basically got benched permanently after the Lakers realized they prefer focusing on developing their young talent, and he was out of the NBA 2 years later. In fact, the dude played just 1 game in the entire 2017-18 season, and he wasn't even injured. Him and the Lakers mutually agreed that he shouldn't play, cause his minutes were better spent elsewhere. Mozgov was out of the league 1 year later, as he had a knee problem and some other medical issues. Neither of them finished out the length of their contracts. Even to this day, they have yet to return to the NBA. Joakim Noah. It was an immediate disaster for the Knicks right after this signing. 4 years, $72 million, a similar contract to Deng's, but Noah just averaged 4 points a game in his final season with the Bulls. And he also underwent a major shoulder surgery. The Knicks were hopeful that he could return to form to tap into his 2014 self. That was a bit too hopeful, and this signing was quickly recognized as the worst in Knicks franchise history. And considering it's the Knicks, that says a lot. Noah played a total of 53 games for the Knicks, got traded a few times, and after that contract expired, he was gone. The Knicks actually had to release him using the stretch provision, cause Noah would not give up any money after the team tried to negotiate a buyout. He wasn't leaving any money on the table. Plus, he had numerous altercations with the coaching staff, including Jeff Hornacek. A source stated, Noah and Hornacek had to be separated during a West Coast practice session. Noah had become vociferous toward Hornacek in the aftermath of a brief appearance in a January 23rd game and engaged the coach verbally in practice the next day. Yeah, not a single thing went right during Noah's tenure in New York. Jim McElligott. So who the hell is Jim McElligott? You know, it's hard to say a player has objectively the worst contract in NBA history because it's all subjective, but I do think he's in the running for that. In 1996, the Seattle Supersonics signed him to a 7-year, $33 million deal, nearly $5 million per year. Keep in mind, the salary cap in 1996 was $24 million, so McElligott was making about 1/5 of the salary cap. That's the equivalent of a player making $25 million a year in 2022, because the cap is $122 million, so it's about 1/5. The problem was, prior to signing that contract, McElligott averaged 2 points a game. Yes, 2 points a game. He was a backup center who averaged 2 points and 3 rebounds a game, and 2 blocks a game as well, which was his only saving grace. Teams back then were obsessed with centers with high block numbers. That's partly why he got this contract. The Sonics were banking on him to make a massive improvement, maybe even become an all-star, hence why they immediately inserted him into the starting lineup. However, it was clear from the get-go he was not capable of that. His numbers barely improved, and he couldn't even finish out the last few years of his deal. His career high was 3.8 points a game and 4 rebounds a game. I think when it comes to bad contracts, there's always some justification for it. Like, for example, with the Joakim Noah contract, at least he was good before. He was an all-star and defensive player of the year a few years prior. So there was some logic in the Knicks offering him his deal. For Jim McElligott, there was no logic whatsoever. There was no past success to go off of. There was no future potential that was visible. And he was only a second-round pick, too. It was just a horrendous contract all around. John Wall. John Wall signed a 4-year, $171 million extension back in 2017. That extension kicked in starting in the 2019-20 season, where he missed the entire year because he ruptured his Achilles after slipping in his own house. As of this video, he's 3 years into that 4-year extension, and so far, he's missed 2 entire seasons, and played just 40 games in one of them, which was basically an irrelevant season for the Rockets anyway. Still, it was strange he missed the entire 2022 season. I mean, he's not injured anymore, but instead, there were disagreements between him and the Rockets front office. Apparently, there were disagreements with his role on the team, and he agreed to sit out until a trade could be found. Then, the deadline passed, and he was still there. Reportedly, there were rumors of a Westbrook for Wall trade, again, and Clutch Sports pressured the Lakers to do that. It never happened, and as of now, Wall's career is in limbo. We don't even know how good he'll be once he returns, but he's basically been absent for the entirety of this huge contract. Jason Williams. Jason Williams is probably more known outside of basketball, and not for a good thing. He's ran into numerous legal problems, including a prison sentence for shooting a limo driver to death. What most people don't know was that he actually had a decent NBA career. Williams was somewhat of a late bloomer, making his first All-Star appearance at the age of 29, and it took a while for him to develop into a competent player. By his late 20s, he became a double-double machine. In one season, he averaged 14 rebounds a game, half of those being offensive rebounds. That's freaking insane, honestly. And right after that breakout year, the Nets rewarded him with a 6-year, $90 million deal in the 1998 offseason. So what happened after that? Well, a year later, during a game, he collided with Stephon Marbury and broke his leg. That required career-ending surgery, and he never returned back to the court. A year after signing the deal, Jason Williams announced his retirement. Literally 1 year into his 6-year contract, he was gone. It was a sad ending to an otherwise promising career. It really looked like he was getting it together until that happened. It didn't help that, when his professional career ended, he had multiple charges of manslaughter and aggravated assault. The dude was always a head case, but it got even worse when he was out of a job. Gilbert Arena. On July of 2008, Gilbert Arena signed a 6-year contract worth $111 million. The thing is, a year prior to this deal, Arena suffered a torn MCL after Gerald Wallace crashed into him. For the entire 2007-8 season, he was trying to recover desperately, but only managed to play 13 games. There were rumors that his knee surgery got botched, and it made no sense why he wasn't back already. Torn MCLs usually take around 6 weeks to fully heal, and players come back within 3 or 4 months. so this was really odd. There was hesitancy among the Wizards brass if they should really re-sign him, but considering how much he's done for the Wizards, they gave him this deal based on his past performances, without considering the current state of his injury. It was a mistake. Arenas hardly played any more games for the Wizards before getting traded in 2010. Plus, that whole gun issue in the locker room resulted in a suspension. Even when he came back, he was no longer relevant. The once explosive, fearsome 30-point-per-game scorer got reduced to nothing. He fell out of the league shortly after. Anyway, that's all folks. Those were some NBA players who basically vanished after signing a massive deal. For one reason or another, it just didn't work out for them. Let me know in the comments if you know of any other situations similar to this. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.